All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the session and thanks for coming in. So in this session, I want to talk about the power of sacred space and the power of the sacred in times of uncertainty and fear. And we are currently obviously living in a time of great uncertainty and instability that has come upon us very, very quickly. And people that I'm in contact with, my advisees, I've been getting a flood of messages, and basically the feeling is that people are looking for comfort, guidance, and direction. And for my part, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything is going to hell because it isn't, right? We are going to get through this. We are in the process of getting through this. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything is going to be okay because it isn't, right? And things are not all going to turn out for the best in the end. There are losses we have sustained, and there are losses we will sustain, and that is just the reality right now. And so what I want to do in this session as just an outreach, a gesture of support to my entire community around the world is to give you a framework, a lens for looking at the sort of current reality of the world right now. And with this lens, hopefully you will be able to very easily take a step back from panic, fear, and uncertainty so that you will be able to restore your own power and clarity of mind. And the importance of clarity of mind in this environment is that you can go out and run around and do anything you need to do. But the question is, in my humble opinion, right, the commodity that is the most scarce and most powerful right now is clarity of mind itself, right? So that you, for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for the life of the world around you, you can navigate all the stuff going on with an increased higher level of power, strength, and ultimately honor. Now, those of you who know me know that I teach meditation and healing. And if you already meditate, you already have a meditation practice that you've learned from me, that you've learned elsewhere. That's great. I know for a fact that there are many of you out there who are using those skills right now to great advantage, and that's fantastic. Now, on the other hand, if you don't meditate, if you don't have a meditation practice, that is okay, right? That is okay. And now is not necessarily the time to be starting a brand new meditation practice. You can try and find things that may work for you. But to sort of, meet that need, the lens I'm going to give you in this video, in this session right now, you can also think of as an alternative to meditation, right? So if you haven't built up those muscles, you don't know the first thing about meditation. Your mind is running around in a million different directions. This lens will also help you de-stress and get back and recover back to your own higher vision and perspective on your life, on the world, on everything. Okay, so that's the goal of this session. So let me dive in here, and I just want to put a couple images up just to help the sort of flow of the conversation here. I'm going to give you this concept that is a powerful concept, accessible to anyone. My goal is to help you recenter and come back to clarity of mind so that you can navigate the sort of uncertainty of everything we're all facing together right now. And the concept that I want to introduce you to is this idea of the sacred versus the profane. Okay, the sacred versus the profane. And what I'll do here, this is the lens that I'm going to give you that will help you do all these things that I've talked about. And what I'll do in the rest of this talk is first I'll explain the concept, and then I'll explain how to use it in your practical life, right? And in many cases, how you're already using it, but just to make that distinction more explicit so that you can get more mileage out of it. Now, when we think about the word sacred, right, what do we think? We think holy, we think churches, we think temples, we think, places where, you shouldn't speak loudly, where you shouldn't act in a, profane manner. Okay, so that's the sacred. And when we typically think about the realm of the profane, when I say the word profane, what do you think about? You think about, curse words, swearing, naughty things, mean things, being very sort of tooth and nail, and not caring about your fellow human being, perhaps shady deals done in all cash in the back alley, right, to sort of get hand sanitizer or something like that, right? Okay, so that's what we think of as the word as being the concept of the profane. In reality, though, the word profane comes from the original Latin word, which is profanum. And the word profanum in Latin actually means, if you just break it down, pro and fanum. Pro means in front of, and fanum is just another word for temple, the sacred site, the holy space. Okay, and what this meant was that in ancient times, there would be the temple, temple of Aphrodite or Jupiter or Ares. You'd have the temple. Okay, so the sacred precinct. You can't curse in there. You can't spill blood. You can't, fight. You can't cheat. You can't lie. You can't steal. Okay. But then out in front of the temple, you had this place called the profanum, the place that was pro in front of the fanum, the temple. Okay. And what happened out here, right? The place out in front of the temple was the marketplace. It's the place where all the souvenirs were sold. You could get, hot dog stands, Euro stands to get your sort of shawarma. Shout out to my New Yorkers out there. And this is also the place where, the money changers were, right? So if I came into the temple, I would exchange my drachma for shekels because the temple would only take shekels. They wouldn't take drachma, whatever, okay? And so the money changers were out here too. And, in the Christian sort of biblical parable of Jesus chasing the money changers out of the temple, if you read it closely, you'll notice that he wasn't saying it's bad to be a money changer per se. He was saying that the money changers did not belong in the atrium of the temple itself. So he whipped them back out to the profanum, where you can still do your money changing stuff, but he was reestablishing the cut line, right, between the realm of the sacred and the profane. He's saying this is the boundary line. Y'all have to get your butts out there because everything on this side of the line is sacred. You can't do your money changer stuff in here. I'm not saying you can't do it at all. I'm saying you can't do it on this side of this cut line between the sacred and the profane, right? The other thing you buy out here in the marketplace before you go into the temple is you would buy your sacrificial chicken or dove or cow or goat. Right? And the way this would work is you can just imagine, and bear with me, there's a point to sort of explaining this. I would come in from out of town, I'd go up to the goat vendor, and he'd look me up and down, see that I've got money from my clothes, right? And he'd say, well, welcome, sir. The temple loves goats. This God loves goats. If you, give him a goat in sacrifice, you'll be sure to have a fortunate reading of the oracle or whatever you come to pray for, right? My ships will not be sunk, and all of my business dealings will go well. But when I'm negotiating with the goat vendor, right, I'm haggling. I'm like saying that, come on, buddy, give me a better price. You have kin in my homeland, the whole 9 yards, right? Making the price, talking about our families. He's like, come on, I've got kids to feed, right? The whole 9 yards, right? Half an hour negotiating back and forth. So I'm fighting tooth and nail over saving a couple of dollars, a couple of euro over this one goat, okay? Because it's my hard-earned money and I want top dollar. I want good value for my money. And then what happens? I take the goat, I lead it across the threshold, across the lintel, right, of the temple entrance into the temple. And what do I do with this goat? Right? A priest's assistant comes and I hand the goat over with a prayer and a bow. Once I'm in the temple, the quality of the space, the physics of the space are completely different. I'm not haggling, I'm not negotiating, I'm not threatening. I come in and this goat that just 5 minutes ago I was like, insulting his family over whether he was going to give me the good price I wanted or not. I come in and I meekly surrender it over to the priests or the priestesses, right? And I give up all my power, and I don't negotiate, and I don't threaten, and I don't control. I give up control. And what do? The priests, like, do the ritual ceremony. They sprinkle it with holy water. This is in ancient times, right? So they would cut the throat of the goat. The blood would go into the mundus, the sort of hole at the bottom of the altar. And then they would burn, dress the goat, cut it up, put it on the altar, and burn it. Right. So this thing that I bought with my hard-earned money, negotiated hard for, I come in and I completely surrender it to literally go up and smoke. Now, you have to ask yourself, why the heck would anyone do that? Right? Why is this entire marketplace outside here? Commerce, trade, good GDP, good economic activity, designed to serve animals, right, or other offerings, like fruits, vegetables, flowers, to be brought into the temple, only to be completely surrendered and go up in a puff of smoke. Right? And the reason is, once you step from the profanum into the templum, into the sacrum, the quality of the space is different. You are no longer in profane space, you are in sacred space, which is a space almost the opposite of profane space. And the thing you go in there to do is not just to de-stress. It's not a spa, right? You're just going to sit in the hot tub, get a massage, and sort of de-stress and rub all your tensions away. It's a place where you actively surrender things you have fought hard for out in the arena. They go up in smoke, and you open yourself to higher guidance in order so that you can have clarity of vision, right? What you hope for when you sacrifice your goat or chicken or whatever it is you bring in is that you will receive blessing and you will receive guidance so that when you go back out into the profanum, right, you are still doing things, you're still fighting the good fight, but because of what you have received in sacred space, you go out there and you know why you're doing what you're doing. You're not just running around busy all day fighting fires. You know why you're there. You know why you walk the earth, because you have that clarity of mind and strength of vision. And that doesn't come from the realm of the profane. That comes from the realm of the sacred. Okay? So just a little bit more detail here just to sort of spell it out for you. So in the profanum, we're talking about the regular world, where things are transactional. They are contracts. There's haggling and competition. There's the goat vendor. Okay? And this realm then is a realm of fear, threat, and control. This is the regular capitalist realm, right? Laissez-faire, free markets. And to a degree, that is okay. Right? If you think about it, a contract is a document that memorializes and encodes threat. Right? If we agree that I will, like, I'm the vendor to the goat seller at the market, right? So I'm the farmer who brings the goats, and we have a contract. Every Sunday I will bring this many goats of this weight, of this quality. None of them will be sick, and I'll bring them by 3 p.m. every Sunday. And the contract stipulates, if I fail, if I bring half as many goats, if half of them are sick, if I bring them 3 hours late, there will be punishments. Right? I will pay fines. I will get sued. The whole 9 yards. So crucify me on the online reviews, et cetera, right? And so even a contract, which we just have as a part of normal, everyday, profane life, is a document that expresses a complete constellation and system of fear, threat, and control. And that is okay. Right? That's how we get the goats to market. Right? Even the temple that's built, right? The marble, the woodwork, the artists, the stained glass windows, right? The working people, the artisans who built all that stuff, they don't work for free. They get paid too. So there's always this mysterious and sort of subtle, right, unspoken relationship between the sacred and the profane. They need each other. They feed off of each other, and they complement each other, even as there is a tension between the boundary between them. Okay, so my point about the profanum, about the profane world, which is the world that we all basically live in, right, in the modern world, is that it is a realm of fear, threat, and control, and that's okay. That's how everything gets built. That's how the economy runs, and that's fine. Right? There's nothing intrinsically wrong with profane space. Okay, but if that's the profane space here, what is this space over here then? Right? What is the nature of sacred space? And the nature of sacred space, right, the sacrum, the phanum, the temple, is the place where the goat is surrendered. It is a place of sanctuary and protection. Across Northern Europe and England and Britain in the Middle Ages, the churches and abbeys, right, uh, were held in such sacred regard that if the sheriff were chasing you and you were a robber, right, and you ran into a church, the sheriff was not allowed to go in, but bust down the doors of the church and drag you out, kicking and screaming. He was not allowed to enter to apprehend you as a robber, even though you have committed a crime, killed someone or whatever. Once you stepped into sacred space, the rules completely change. And he would lay siege and get the priest to sort of push you out, and the priest would say no. Right? It would be this sort of reverse hostage kind of standoff, right? So it is a place of sanctuary. It is a place of recognized and enforced protection, and it is a realm in direct opposition to the realm of the profane, whereas the realm of the profane is a realm of fear, threat, and control. The ideal sacred space is a realm devoid of fear, threat, and control. And what is the opposite of fear, threat, and control? It is love. Instead of threat, there is nurturing. And instead of control, there is surrender. So it is a realm not of fear, threat, and control, but of love, nurturing, and surrender. Why do you go into surrender? You go into surrender, you lay your donation, you light your candle, and you pray. And when you pray, some of the time you're asking for things, but a lot of the times you're just sitting there quietly, and thoughts and inspiration are coming into you. Right? If you pray a lot, eventually you get to that point where you're like, I'm going to stop talking at whoever I'm praying to, and I'm going to shut up and I'm just going to listen. Right? And if you listen long enough, you will hear the things and guidance that come to you. That's what you do in sacred space. You can't do that when you're locked up and in the arena with your sword and shield ready to fight. There's nothing wrong with being in that mode. But when you're in that mode, you cannot also receive higher guidance. Right? It's not even a moralistic thing. It's just a question of logistics or physics. Right? The antenna dish can't receive the deep space long distance channel if it is closed up and you're in the middle in the thick of an actual fight. Okay. So the profanum is the realm of fear, threat, and control. And the templum, the sacred space, is the realm of love, nurturing, and surrender, where you surrender to receive higher guidance. Now, the thing with sacred and profane space, obviously, is that you need both, right? You need both. Both are absolutely valid in reality. And the only question for any given individual, or any given culture for that matter, is what is the mix of sacred and profane? Now, modern life, right, the world we live in, what sort of modern Western life, tends to be 1% sacred and 99% profane. And my take on that is, if you are okay with that, then that is okay. Right? There's no set rule, there's no law that says the cut line needs to be here or there. Okay. However, what you do find, right, is that whatever the percentages, 1, 50%, 70%, if you are at a point in your life when you lack the power of the sacred, right? 1% is actually not enough. And how do you know it's not enough? You start feeling it's not enough when you start to exhibit the symptoms of having not enough sacred in your life. And the symptoms are basically when you lack the power of the sacred in your life, there are certain kinds of nourishment, emotional nourishment, spiritual nourishment, which can only be absorbed in the realm of the sacred. If you're out and about fighting fires all day, right, running around in the world of the transactional, in the world of competition, in the world of fear, threat, and control, there are certain forms of nourishment, right, emotional nourishment and spiritual nourishment, that you will tend to be starved of. Okay, and it's not a moralistic thing. You're not bad, and there's nothing wrong with you. If you're okay with whatever mix you're at, that's okay. Right? You are the sovereign of your life. You make your own decisions. But in terms of just the symptoms and how these things work in patterns of people, when you lack the nourishment of the sacred, you naturally have too much fear, threat, and control because you're too much in that realm. You're not in the other realm. You'll have stress, anxiety, insomnia. You'll have anger because why wouldn't you be angry if you're lacking that kind of nourishment in your life? And then last but not least, you will tend to have a lack of vision and direction in life. The way it's always described to me is I'm running around, I'm busy all day, I'm doing all this stuff. And, truth be told, if I'm honest with myself, I don't know why the hell I'm doing half of this stuff. Right? I'm like on autopilot and I'm not happy. I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm not sleeping well, and I'm friggin' angry all the time. Right? And again, for me, if you're okay with that state of affairs, then that's okay, right? You are sovereign. But if you're not okay, one of the things that happens that leads to that is that you have this cut line between the sacred and the profane where you're not getting enough sacred. You're just not getting enough sacred, right? And you decide for yourself what is enough. So that begs the question of, all right, fine, to the extent that you are resonating with things I'm saying, the next question would be, so fine, how do I increase the sacred in my life? And what the sacred is, right, devoid of any religion or spirituality or anything else like that. Just the pure brass tacks, just concrete aspects of just what makes something sacred is any held, protected space and time in your life. Okay, which you have by design made devoid of fear, threat, and control. Okay, regardless of religion, regardless of spirituality. So in practical life, this could be quiet time for yourself. This could be a long run that you take. This could be a talk with a friend that you can always trust to have your back and not criticize you or judge you. And you go to that friend when you need a certain kind of talk, right, in sacred space. It could be meditation, prayer, yoga. But the thing is, for most people, they are not aware, they don't have this lens of there being a clear cut line between sacred and profane. So you often have these situations where it's kind of half sacred, half profane, right? So you're driving in your car, and that becomes, when you're on a road trip and you're driving your commute in the morning, right? Even with the radio off, no, there's no podcast, there's no audiobook playing, you're just sort of driving. For some people, that can end up being a pseudo-sacred kind of environment because when they're driving, they're in control, they have no fear, threat, they're not over-controlling, the car's practically driving itself. And you kind of go off into this sort of higher zone, right? Now, that's not complete sacred space because you have not necessarily protected it with a strong boundary. In other words, your phone is still on, so your boss can call you anytime, and you'll break sacred space, you'll answer it, and you'll get yelled at by your boss, right? Or your spouse or your partner or your parent or whoever. And if you had a stronger boundary there to say for the next half hour, this is sacred space, no calls, nothing, right? You will be able to sink deeper into the sacred and start to take sort of the full power of that emotional, spiritual nourishment that will naturally come to you as you do these things, okay? So it can be quiet time, long run, whatever, but the more protected that space is, the better, the more punctuated, the more bookended, the better. When I was a kid, my mom, she's working mom, single mom, she would, be in the bathroom, she'd be in the bath, and she'd be in the bath for a good half hour, 45 minutes, reading a book, de-stressing, and that was her sacred space. And to anybody else in the household, we knew, right? God help you, right? If you had to knock on the door and ask mom for something or ask, where are my sneakers? You just didn't do that because you knew there would be hell to pay. So that's a great example of sacred space devoid of fear, threat, and control. For the person in the bath or outside the bath, we're all like, oh, better not mess with mom, right? So we have full fear, threat, and control outside, but that's appropriate. That's appropriate. And with strong punctuated boundaries, right? So that when you're in that sacred space, when you're in the bath, when you're doing yoga, when you're sort of doing your meditation, reading a book, whatever it is that works for you, you are able to sink deeply into that. And the amount is, there's no rule on the amount either. Right? If you go for a walk for like 10 minutes and 5 of those minutes, right, you have successfully had full sacred space, devoid of fear, threat, and control, then that 5 minutes will often turn out to be the most nourishing 5 minutes of your entire day. That 5 minutes of full power sacred space can end up powering you through the rest of your entire day or even 2 days. Okay. Now, given the way I'm describing this, a lot of you are sitting out there right now going like, actually, I kind of do this already. Right? I am the mom and I take that bath. And my kids know not to mess with me when I'm in the bath, right? It's like mama's time, right? And so there's a pretty good chance you already do some version of this, right? And the reason is, consciously or not, we all have our own versions of this. And the reason for that is sacred space is an innate human phenomenon, right? And even though nobody's taught us in school about sacred space the way I'm explaining it to you now, we're not stupid, right? We instinctively know these things, and some of us will just know to sort of like carve this time out. And people often say, I love when you talk about sacred versus profane space because I didn't have the words to express it, but I knew I needed something like this. And now you've given me the words, I have a lens, and it's like this clear, very clear area of realm of temple sacred space all throughout my life now, right? That I have highlighted and I actively protect, and then I take nourishment from. Okay. So the key here then is to take this lens that I'm giving you so that you explicitly know there is a difference between profane and sacred. This profane is a thing. Sacred is a thing. There's nothing wrong with either. You need both. But then you consciously tune the cut line, the balance and proportion to your personal need and liking. It could be 1% sacred, 99% profane. It could be 99% sacred, 1% profane, right? If you're a monastery or something, right? If you're in a monastery or any place in between, to tune it to your own proportion and need and liking, especially in these times of uncertainty and instability. Okay. Because the goal of being able to hold more sacred space for yourself, if you want to, only if you want to, okay, is to give yourself the emotional and spiritual nourishment of being in a protected space, created and maintained by yourself, a realm of no fear, no threat, and no control. So that in that quiet space, even in that 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you decide to carve out for yourself, you can safely surrender, right? And open yourself, open that inner antenna dish, which is vulnerable when you open it, right? Very vulnerable, very suggestible. You can't just open it willy-nilly in the middle of the street. So when you're in your protected sacred space, you can open that antenna dish within you to the higher guidance that will come to you. However it may come to you. It may come to you in the form of intuition, inspiration, flashes of insights, dreams, right? However it comes to you. It's not necessarily a religious thing. It's not necessarily a spiritual thing. It's just coming deep into your own core and center to re-tap into what is the proper vision and path of your life so that you return to clarity of vision. Okay. And the point of this whole exercise is not just to de-stress, right, and blow off steam. Because there are many other ways to blow off steam that don't involve the sacred, right? You can have 3 cocktails tonight, that will de-stress you. You can watch Netflix, that will de-stress you, right? And there's nothing wrong with doing those things, right? But what we're talking about here is beyond just de-stressing. When you step explicitly into sacred space and just sit there and soak in the nourishment of being in sacred space, what you're doing is you are fully recharging your emotional reserves, your spiritual reserves, and you're refreshing and reclarifying your inner life vision. Okay. So that when you return to the profanum, and you will, right? Because the profanum is part of our life too. So when you return to the arena, you return to the realm of fear, threat, and control to do all the things you need to do in this crazy world right now. you will re-enter the arena with refilled power and capability, not only for doing all the things you need to do, but also to have a continued and refreshed and clear vision for why you need to do them, why you need to do the things you're doing every day, right? To basically every day in this crazy world before us, make your best move with clarity of mind and clarity of vision. So that's my pitch for the rightful place of sacred space in your life. And the cut line, 1%, 99%, somewhere in between, is completely up to you. You are the sovereign of your own life. So what are some next steps? Right now, the thing you can do right after you finish watching the session is to just reflect on your own and figure out what your own ideal, most comfortable, most nourishing forms of sacred space are. It could be the run, it could be yoga, it could be watching TV, it could be any of these things. If they recharge you and nourish you spiritually, emotionally, and give you a chance to recover and retap into that higher sense of vision and clarity in your life. Right? Which is why for most people, TV doesn't work, because there's active input coming in, you're not receiving anything. But be that as it may, you will find your own ideal forms, right? It can be multiple forms of sacred space. And the thing you can do is then declare them, you protect them, and even consecrate them, right? So for instance, if it is this half-hour run that you do every day, and you're like, no, that is my sacred space, then you declare, you tell everyone you're living with, I'm going for a run, my phone is going to be off for half an hour. Maybe I'll make an exception for like emergency people in my life, but they know if you call me during this half hour, I'm expecting it's going to be an emergency, and if it's not an emergency, I'm going to ask you to like not do that again. Okay, so you declare it, right, with a bright line for yourself and the people in your world, so that you know that when you're in that half-hour run, you are fully protected. You are fully protected, and it is your realm devoid of fear, threat, and control. Right. And another details is if it's devoid of threat and control, then when you feel like you want to stop running, you stop running. You don't threaten yourself to force march yourself to keep running. You don't set a timer. You just run to relax, right? And to bring yourself into that mode of no fear, threat, and control, where your attitude toward yourself is one of love, nurturing, and surrender. Okay. So you're not running in that case because it's good for you, right? You're running because it feels good and it puts you into that mode of sacred space, as one example. So that's the thing you can do right now to identify. It could be sitting in a bath. It could be cooking, making cookies, right? Whatever it is, it may be for you. But the key sort of criteria is that it also opens you up to receiving that higher vision, to reflect on what you need to do, what's important to you, and to restore your clarity of vision. Now, if you would like extra support in this, okay, you can also join me in an additional online sort of live gathering. I'll be there live, right, not just in video, of shared sacred space. And what I'll do in that session is I will actually create and form the sacred space for all of us in the gathering, so that you can have a sort of direct taste, like for what that tastes like, what that feels like. It's not as powerful as when we're in person, when I do this on my retreats around the world. But we've been doing this for a few years online with certain advisees, small groups of advisees that I work with. And we've gotten it pretty good. We've gotten pretty close, okay? And so for those of you who may also be healers in your own right, where you have your own populations to take care of, I want to give you the principles of how sacred space is managed and how I sort of do that. And the guidelines for Presidian sacred space, right, the sort of practices that I keep, are that there are 4 basic guidelines for keeping sacred space in a group. The first, and you'll experience this if you join the sort of, and it's free. There's no sort of pitch or anything. It's just a service for the community. And the 4 guidelines that we will keep, the 4 values that we will observe are: number 1, confidentiality. Confidentiality, standard Vegas rules. What we say in sacred space stays in sacred space. The second is we hold space for each other. So it is a zone of no fear, control, or threat, where we don't wag our fingers at each other. We don't give each other tough love. And when we're in the session, I'll explain that more and more. The third, which is very interesting, is it is a zone of no commerce. So when you are in sacred space with me, right here or in the following session, I cannot sell you anything ever, right? I cannot sell you anything. And the short version, the short form explanation of this, the thumbnail is that when someone is selling you or pitching you something, right, you need to buy my hair tonic to regrow your hair, right? There is an implied threat, and I'm poking at your fear so that you think to yourself, oh my gosh, if I don't buy his hair tonic, I won't grow my hair, and I will lose love. I'll be less worthy. People will love me less somehow. So every commercial sales pitch, right, in the profanum is this sort of bolus of fear, threat, and control. Right, I poke the fear, I threaten you with additional loss if you don't buy my product, and then I control you by getting you to pay me money to give you my product. So that's profane space, that's not sacred space. So when we are in sacred space, I cannot sell you anything. It is forbidden. Okay, that's the third one. And then the fourth one is that there is no expectation of participation. Okay, which means if you're lurking in the back, I mean in physical space, if you're lurking in the back of the room and we have a coffee break, nobody's going to come up to you and say, hey, you've been quiet, why don't you say something, why don't you participate? Nobody's going to say that to you, right? Because again, that is a very subtle, very soft, but still a form of fear, threat, and control to kind of nudge you, cattle prod you back into the fold. And we cannot do that because it is sacred space. When I do groups in physical space, we adhere to this so closely. Let me just turn this alarm. Excuse me, it's going to go off. We adhere to this so closely that even when we do our intros, name tags are optional, but I don't even go around the circle to ask everyone to introduce themselves. Right? Because if I say, let's start with you, Joe, you're sitting across from me, you're counting, oh my gosh, there's 6 people before I need to come up with what I'm going to say, right, to the group. And again, there is no expectation of participation. Because the threat and the fear and the control is that when we get to you, if you don't feel like saying anything, you'll be shamed, we'll be like, come on, and we'll push you. And we don't do that because it's sacred space. Right? I've had people pay thousands of dollars come to my retreats, and the whole time they don't say a word the whole time. They're just sitting in the corner eating shrimp cocktail, right? And nobody messes with them. And at the end, weeks afterwards, they will tell me that it was one of the most nourishing experiences they've ever had, because for many people, this is one of their first experiences of ever being in any kind of space where they know beyond the shadow of a doubt, with certainty, that they're safe and that there is no element of fear, threat, and control anywhere around them, and they can just relax and nobody will mess with them in any way, shape, or form. That's part of the power of sacred space, if you can feel that, right, as I'm describing it. So confidentiality, holding space, no threat, no commerce, and no expectation of participation. Those are the 4 sort of principles we will be holding in this live online session that will be in a couple days. The link will tell you sort of all the information. So right now it'll be on Crowdcast. Right now we're thinking it'll be 2 days from now, March 22nd, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Free of charge, obviously, but also no commerce. Nothing will be sold to you. And when you click in, you will post your comments and reflections, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, as question items in this page you'll see. And then I will guide us through the sacred space. And the way I will guide you through is that I will be guided by the major themes of all the questions that you post, like your concerns, what you're thinking about, how you're feeling. I will guide us through sacred space doing that. It'll be free of charge as a support to the community in this time of fear of uncertainty. And the benefit for me, just so you know, is that it is nourishing to be in sacred space, regardless of whether you are like me, the facilitator, or the technical term is the ritual elder. I don't think I'm that old, but the ritual elder, or the sort of participant. For you and for me, being in sacred space together nourishes all of us. So I'm doing this for my own sort of selfish benefit as well, because I am nourished when I'm in sacred space with you. I'm nourished right now, even doing this video for you. So it's for all of us to come together to share in the nourishment, the emotional, the spiritual nourishment, the clarity of mind nourishment of being in shared sacred space together. Open to everyone. You can invite your friends. No commerce, it's non-religious. We will record it so you can watch it later. And then after that, if people find it helpful, I'm happy to do them weekly or even more frequently than weekly, especially during this very sort of impacted time, as much as people feel it, find it useful and nourishing. And again, to recap, the goal of having this online sacred space is to have a protected area of time and space devoid of fear, threat, and control, where we can take in the emotional nourishment and spiritual nourishment of being in shared sacred space and safely surrender and open ourselves to our own inner higher guidance and vision from within. Right? When you surrender, you're not surrendering anything I'm saying. I'm holding the sacred space for you, and we all will be together, so that in each of us within our own selves, we can open to whatever insight or intuition comes to us, to guide us when we go back out into the arena with sword and shield, ready to sort of, fight the battle of the day, right? And it is a big battle that we're fighting right now, right? To sort of heal the world of this virus that has taken us. So that's it. Next steps then, coming out of this session. Number one, immediately start thinking about recovering more sacred space on your own, if you want, only if you want. No fear, threat, and control, only if you want. And then optionally, you can also register for the live session, and then post your questions, thoughts, and reflections using the big orange button in the session page. So the way it works is basically that you'll register for this Crowdcast thing. There will be a big button saying ask a question or suggest a topic. You'll hit it. There will be a box for you to write your question. Now, there's a character limit on the box. So if you have a long question, you're writing a novel, you just want to sort of vent and spill, okay? What I would do is I would write a headline of your question in the box, hit post, and then find your question posted, probably at the bottom because it just got posted, and then comment on your own question. And there's no limit on commenting. So once you post your question, you can comment on your own question and write as long as you want. I mean, if it's very long, I may end up skimming it more than reading the whole thing because it's only 2 days away, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone's doing okay, staying safe and healthy. And I just, I appreciate all of you in the community. This is my just outreach and love letter to all of you. Thank you so much for being in this community. Thank you so much for being in my life. I appreciate you. And that's it. So email me anytime if you have my email, or just post your question in the Sacred Space session. And if all goes well, I'll see you in a couple of days, and then potentially after that as well. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next session. Thank you.